Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Into the Darkness, a brand new podcast where we'll be taking a deep dive into the horror genre, be it films, games, literature, and beyond. We'll be covering classics, old and new, and maybe just some underrated gems we want to shine a light on. My name's Steve Fitzgerald, or Uncanny Steve if you're on social media, and I'm joined today by my wonderfully talented and lovely friend and collaborator, Sara Lynam. Hello, Sara.
Hi, that's me,
Hello.
Sara Lynam.
Hello. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good, thank you. It is nice and early on a Sunday morning. If it's all right to divulge when we're recording this, yes,
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry.
A
It's
very, a very,
pre-recorded. It's not
a
live.
very, a very autumnal Sunday morning as
Oh, it's
well.
delightful, isn't it? So
It's very
nice.
nice indeed. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, Sara?
Yeah, I don't know what you'd want to know, but I guess the important things are I'm an actor, singer, voiceover, big fan of horror. Although, in saying that, it's one of these things that I came to late in life, and I think that's
Hmm.
partly to do with the fact that my parents are not big horror fans. So
Okay.
my exposure to it is, or was limited as a kid, and now I'm like, oh, I've opened the portal to horror
Absolutely.
in my adult life, and I'm like, let's do this, let's watch everything, let's consume it all.
Heading into the cosmic horrors, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
awesome, awesome. What we're going to do is, just a little bit of a background about myself. I'm a writer, director, performer as well, based in London. Sara and I have been working together now for. That's a good question. How long have we been working together for, Sara?
Insert number of years that we definitely know off the top of our heads here.
Absolutely. We're at least approaching 10 if we've not already hit that
I think
number,
it might
yes?
actually be 10. Yeah.
I think so.
I think it was 2015. Yeah.
That sounds about right, doesn't it? That sounds about right.
hmm
Fantastic.
That's wild.
So, yeah, I know, right? What we're going to do today is we are going to begin our brand new podcast, Into the Darkness. But first, we actually have some really exciting things to announce. And I'm going to hand over to Sara for a moment, who's going to tell you about all the exciting things that Uncanny Collective has got coming up in the future.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's so exciting. We're just really thrilled to be back. Obviously, we've been on a bit of a hiatus. Those of you who have followed us from before COVID times when we were creating content and shows and things like that. But yeah, we're back. We are doing this new podcast, which is exciting, Into the Darkness, which is where Steve and I, hopefully some of the other Uncanny members, and maybe some special guests from time to
Hey.
time, we'll be discussing everything horror, all the media we can consume, be it film, TV, theatre, video games, and beyond. We also have a Christmas special coming up of our podcast
That's
Into the
right.
Darkness. So you can expect 3 spooky ghost stories just in time for Christmas. And we also will be bringing back the podcast proper in 2026. So
Hey.
follow our socials. That's Uncanny Collective on Facebook or Uncanny_Collective on Instagram.
Fantastic. And I think we have to say as well that could we have a little click on that subscribe button or follow button or whatever
We've got a
appropriate
point
button
somewhere.
is?
Maybe I'll put a
Yeah,
button or something in at some
maybe
point.
so. Hang on. There we go. They're in my hands now. But whichever one of those buttons is on, if you're just listening to this on Spotify, I think it's follow. If you're watching us on YouTube, I think it's a subscribe button. But give us a click so that you don't miss any episodes. And yeah, we look forward to going on this journey and having you along with us. So let's get on to the topic of today's episode. So what we wanted to make sure we did with the first episode of Into the Darkness was cover a real classic, do a film that we know a lot of people love and that is a really influential film in the horror genre. So we decided on A Nightmare on Elm Street. And one of the reasons for that, one of the nice things about it was that we got to attend a screening of it a few days ago and see it in the cinema, where films are meant to be seen and experience it together before we spoke about it. The cool thing about that was that I think I've seen Elm Street quite a few times now. I saw it when I was probably well, this will be a common theme, but too young is probably the answer every single time. But it was later on after I'd seen some of the other classics. But Sarah, this was your first viewing of A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. I had never seen it before. I know it's one of the classics, and actually one of my New Year's resolutions, I would say for this year, but we're nearly at the end of this year, but for next year will definitely be to make sure I tick off all those classics. It just feels like you can have an added appreciation for horror if you understand sort of where it's come from as well as where it is now.
I think that's absolutely true. And and so what did you know about A Nightmare on Elm Street going into the screening?
I think it would be impossible to have not heard of Freddy Krueger.
Absolutely.
So I already knew who the big bad was. I knew that it was driven primarily by the monster, the creature, Freddy, being something that affects you while you sleep. I knew that Johnny Depp was in it, and that it was like his debut. I think that's all I knew. So going into it, it was pretty, aside from obviously having basically the main idea spoiled, I suppose. That was all I knew.
That I think that's awesome going in like that, because you don't have, apart from obviously because Freddy's such a sort of cultural icon, so I think it would be impossible for even if someone didn't like horror and they almost actively avoided horror films and the horror genre, that they would know who Freddy Krueger was for sure, I think.
Yeah.
But being being able to go in and experience the plot, not having any spoilers, so I think that's really exciting and really cool. I think I first saw Nightmare probably late at night on something like Sky Movies, and unlike a lot of the other franchises like Friday the 13th and Halloween, I saw the original first. I saw the first Nightmare, and it really struck me, and we'll go into this a little bit later on, but just how creepy it was, compared to some of the others. Because I guess we all relate to that element of going to sleep and dreaming, and there are things within the film that I think really represent dreams really, 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 really well. I'll just do, before we head into the film proper, I'll do a little bit of a background for people who maybe aren't so familiar with the background of A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then we're going to go in and we're going to really talk about it. Okay, so A Nightmare on Elm Street was it's the product of writer-director Wes Craven, who is obviously, of course, another real horror icon, director before Nightmare of films like The Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes, both of which are, pretty dark, sort of, I guess the word would be the sort of brutal, nihilistic films. And Last House on the Left in particular is, it had an awful lot of trouble with the censor board in the UK when it came out. And it's a very angry film. It's a film made by a filmmaker who really wanted to put out there sort of the distress and the horror that he saw happening around him. But then after this, he went on to make DC's Swamp Thing, which is... I don't know too much about the production of. I don't know whether it was more sort of a director for hire job or not, but it's a fun movie. And then we get to the 80s with him writing this script, Nightmare on Elm Street, which was inspired. I know that Wes said that it was inspired by an article he'd read about the sudden death of some Laotian Hmong refugees who'd come to the US. And they had trouble sleeping, and when they did sleep, they had these terrible nightmares, and then they died in their sleep, which is, pretty out there, pretty extreme, unsettling story. And then when he had the script together, it was made by New Line Cinema, who at that point had started producing films, but had began their career founded by Robert Shea, and he had distributed a lot of John Waters films, so very, very different from a Nightmare on Elm Street, but equally sort of classic. And then Elm Street was their big production that really caught on with everyone, and actually New Line Cinema, after its release, was christened as the house that Freddy built because of the impact that Elm Street had. So there's a little bit of a background into the befores of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So let's head into the film. So the very very opening, so the title sequence. How did you feel about that? Because I think it's this really great sort of setting of mood and tone.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, my overall impression of the film is that I really, really liked it.
Awesome.
So the opening sequence being set in this like really kind of boiler room with the sort of like the color palettes all kind of orangey and kind of feels kind of autumnal and Halloweeny straight off the bat. And the kind of like the noise like of that kind of area is really cool and really creepy. The sort of clinking of chains and like steam and like it was just really like evocative straight off the bat. And I'm like, this is cool. And you can see him like creating that glove, that like horrible like iconic piece of like his character like being made literally there. I was like, I did not know that was what we were going to get straight off the bat.
Yeah, it doesn't sort of hold anything back at the start, does it? It's like
not at all.
Here is our tone, and even though you don't see his face, it's like here's our weapon, that we're going to see in the film.
Yeah, I thought that was like so cool straight off the bat, and when you come out of that sequence into realizing that was a dream, and obviously, unfortunately, I did already know that, but I would imagine that seeing that for the first time, even me watching it, I did feel like this to a certain extent, but like the concept of it all being around dreams and sleep being kind of something that's unavoidable for humans. Like we need that. Like that's important for our survival. So for that to feel like the thing that you can't do in order to survive is so, yeah, I just really found that quite eerie and quite like unsettling, that the thing that you need in order to just exist as a human being properly is being taken away from you. And that was one thing that you had to like fight against. So I found that very, very cool.
That's it, isn't it? Because it's so inescapable, as you say. We need it, however hard it may be to come by. Sometimes, we can't go without it. And I guess that's what really, at the start, really makes it stand apart. Because you can, there are those sort of slasher rules that exist that you sort of think, well, someone can sort of avoid doing this, that, or the other, or they can not go to Camp Crystal Lake if they don't want to. They can. Exactly. Not spend a particular day of the year in Haddonfield, but they got to sleep, and that's that's the danger zone here. And then we have that awesome, almost sort of as we said earlier, how well this film encapsulates dreams, and Tina sees a lamb, isn't it, or a sheep sort of run past, which is such a dreamlike moment, where you go, what's that doing there? And then the moment, the jump scare where she's there and it's all happening in front of her, and then Freddy you get a glimpse for a moment of him behind her, and then she's awake, and then we get this interaction with Tina and her mum, where she wakes up in bed, and her mum comes in, and there's a guy in the other room, and he sort of wants her to sort of come back to bed, and there's this feeling of just this being more of an inconvenience than a concern, that her daughter's had this scare.
I feel like, I mean, and not to kind of like dive too deep into this super early, but like I feel like overall the parents are a bit like useless. Like it feels like a common theme that the mum who is like weirdly like super sassy occasionally and like is quite an icon, but like as we said almost straight after seeing it, it was like she was in a different film. Like she's great to watch though. Like it's so entertaining, but I do feel like her alcoholism, like at times is almost comical, because it's like, how has she hidden so many of these bottles of vodka all over the house?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the other parents are all kind of absent and just kind of, it's as if they're not really kind of living up to what you would expect of a parent, especially during adolescence, which is like a really tough time for anyone.
It's I'm so pleased you've said that, because this is actually something I was going to bring up later, but you've put that really nicely. So let's maybe talk a little bit about it now. Is that I completely agree with you. I feel like one of the big themes of this film is almost the separation between adults and their children, the sort of the generational gap, and also that dawning on you have, I guess, as a teenager, when you realize that actually your parents can't protect you from everything, and that you are going to again. So, just a quick one. We're going to spoil the film a lot. So if you haven't seen it, it's already terribly spoiled for you. So, spoiler warning for 10 minutes ago. But that really is it. That the kids are realizing that their adults can't always protect them, and also that sometimes kids are victims of the decisions that their parents make. It reminds a film from much more recently, but which again, I think was about 10 years ago. But it follows, does this really well, where it's set in this, sort of, you can't really tell what era the film is, and almost all of the adults are either shot from far away or from behind, so you never get a good look at them. And I think that's really influenced by what Nightmare on Elm Street did. The ineffectualness of adults to understand what you're going through, I guess.
Yeah,
definitely.
Which is crazy because, adults had to have gone through adolescence at some point, so they should understand. But I do think there's something to be said about how, as time goes on, it kind of separates you from that. And also that inherently humans, we do be selfish.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree with that. And I guess with all of our... all the generations experience different events in their life, different traumas. There are certain expectations that maybe people, that our parents have, in terms of, I don't know, something like the job market, where you hear this sort of idea that, we can just go out and, just find it if you need it. And obviously nowadays it's a very different world, finding
Indeed.
So maybe we'll touch a little bit more on that later on, but I completely agree with you that one of the big things in this film is that what's going on between adults and their kids, what's going on there. So then after these moments, we go to early morning in this, it's school time, and our main cast are arriving at school, and we meet our even though one of them disappears from the film very early on, we meet our four protagonists. We have Nancy and Glenn, and we have Rod and Tina. And they arrive, and there's a little bit of banter between them. And Tina probably delivers what is what I guess you'd call the sickest burn in the entire film. I think
it's so good. It's so good, especially because the lead up to it is so the classic kind of jock. There's a really cool it feels like they do quite a good job of being here are the stereotypes. You've got your blonde, your brunette, you've got your slightly more sensitive guy, and then you've got your jock who's kind of more of a sexualized kind of character. And one of the first things he says is talking about is having a hard on, right? And then she's like, oh, but my name's only 4 letters. You don't even have enough room for that.
So good, so good.
Burn.
It's it's an excellent, and it's really it's something that I think Wes Craven's really good at as well, is writing sort of some levity into his films. Some really good laughs and some fun interactions, and they need it because, particularly early on, the films are really dark, and they need that in there to offset, I think. So they all arrive. We get a sick burn. We get introduced to our lead cast, and Nancy and Tina sort of reveal to each other that they've had similar dreams. Maybe I think this is the point where they do that. I think I'm right with that. And Tina expresses that this was a really scary dream, and they all decide to have a sleepover. Rod's now, I think, not invited because he's just too friendly and pleasant and utterly likable that they decide they can't do without him. So he can't be there. And then we get this odd moment. We cut to later on. It's in the evening, and Tina and Nancy are there, and Glenn has to fake to his mum that he's not staying with two girls. Yeah. He's at an airport and uses a cassette tape. I was convinced. I don't know about you.
I mean, I thought that was perfect. I wish I'd thought of things like that when I was growing up. Oh yeah. If we had really realistic background noise, that would really sell the story. I think it's great. I also, it's kind of it's a playful way of saying, they're doing something they probably shouldn't, which is all hanging out when they're of a certain age, and they're probably thinking about like things that they shouldn't be thinking about, so they shouldn't be hanging out together. So this is kind of like this great, like, we're actually still kids. This is like a form of play, I reckon. And I just like that it's really cute and it's really funny, and it kind of doesn't really go as planned, and it kind of makes his character seem quite like innocent and lovely. It's just a nice little moment, and their friendship really, like, you can see it between the three of them, because I don't think Rod's there at that point.
No, absolutely not. No.
But the dynamic between the three of them is really cute and really lovely.
You're absolutely right. It does feel. I didn't think of it. It does feel really innocent, doesn't it? It's like, if this is the naughtiest thing they get up to, you sort of think, oh, maybe, give them a break, really. But you definitely get a look at that dynamic between them, and I think particularly Nancy and Tina really giggling together, like this is, a really strong friendship. And then we hear a noise from outside, and it's very tense, and sensibly they head outside to investigate. Glenn heads into the darkness towards the bushes, and who's there but all around decent, lovely guy, who I definitely am not speaking ironically of at all. Rod is there, and he, does a prank and jumps out at Glenn. And is this the moment where has Rod already pulled a knife on Glenn at this point, or is this the moment? I can't.
I think this is the moment.
Is it?
I think yeah, because I don't think we see it at the school. Oh, I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like this is the moment, and it only kind of happens like very, very quickly. It catches the moonlight, and it's like oh, don't forget this. This is important for later.
It's much less of a moment than someone pulling a knife on someone tends to be.
Should be,
I think. But
they do kind of laugh. Oh, Rod!
There he is with his knife again. Him and that knife. So if it isn't this moment, by the way, we'll be told in the comments section. So it's
I'm
all
sure
good.
we will.
And please do let us know. We want to know. After this happens, ha ha ha! Look, I scared you all. Isn't that funny? They all head inside because, of course, and. Tina and Rod make up with each other in the way that you only can make up with each other in a slasher movie. And it's, I'll give you a hint, it's not Scrabble. But maybe it should be. Wouldn't that be a weird slasher cliche? If you played a board game, that's when they come and got you. So they all go to bed. Nancy, Glenn tries to, maybe get something going with Nancy, but she's like, no, we're here for Tina. We're here for Tina. We can't be thinking of ourselves. We can't give in to our carnal, lust. We must be here for our friend. Tina and Rod don't feel the same way. Rod.
You mean Nancy and Rod, right?
No, Tina and Rod. So they go upstairs and they.
I thought it was the other way around.
No, that's okay. So Tina and Rod, they head upstairs, and Rod is really there for Tina at that moment, I think. And Glenn is downstairs listening to what's going on, and that's when we head into what is for me, really, if I were to pick a scene from the film, the standout scene from the film for me, which is Tina's nightmare that she goes into, and the build up to it is so amazing. You get this earlier on. We see Tina after her first nightmare with the cross on her wall, and then Nancy is staying in her room. The cross falls off. And we see something which, obviously, having watched the film, if you knew nothing about it, you wouldn't know who this is. But we see Freddie come up and almost come through the wall at Nancy and then go back. And then a lovely effect of her putting the cross back on the wall, and the wall is solid again.
That was super cool.
It's a great effect. It's a great moment, isn't it? So then we head to so all of this stuff is sort of setting up these great shots of the house. It's all really moody. Wall Freddy has appeared, and then we go into Tina's nightmare. And I think this scene really captures so many of those things that we can relate to in a nightmare. You know, this feeling of emptiness of the place that you're in, that you're alone, somewhere that feels familiar but doesn't feel right. You know, and so Tina comes out of the house, out back. She goes out the back fence, the back gate, heads into like an alleyway, and then we see Freddy, you know, in the darkness, but for the first time with these strange, long, elongated arms where the knives on his fingers scratch against the sides. What did that moment feel like for you?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's one of those moments where initially you're thinking, okay, what are you doing? Why are you going outside? But then I think because of the fact that it's a dream, all of these places are kind of, I mean, you don't really have control over some of it. I mean, I know there is a kind of concept of like lucid dreaming and having control, but I think the main thing that they're trying to do is say that actually you don't have control. You have to follow where the dream is sending you. So I think like you instantly have to forget all those kind of things you think about horror films normally where people have control over what they're doing or where they're going. So initially I was like, don't go outside. What are you doing? You got no shoes on as well. Like, come on now. And then you see him, and again, I think it's like this first full reveal of his face, right? And it's really like, obviously looking at this as someone who's seeing it now as opposed to seeing it at the time, but I thought it was really camp. There was a sort of like almost like a glamour or like a reveal to it that it was like, oh yeah, this is what you wanted. Yeah, here's me with my hat and my amazing glove. You can see everything, all the iconic parts of him, like the burnt skin, the fedora, the glove, the jumper, like it's all there, and it's like bam, here you go.
There's
you
a
didn't
reveling.
have it before. You just had a silhouette, and now you have this.
Absolutely, there's a reveling, like you say about that element of camp there, and I think what it is it's that reveling in his own perversity that you feel from the character at that moment. You know, he's indulging himself, and I think that's a really good indication early on of what sort of character he is. In the later films, which we won't speak too much about because that's for later, but he you know, in the later films he becomes much more this sort of you know, sort of jovial, wisecracking sort of character. He's still, you know, he's still Freddy, but there's a lightness, a funness to him that here is there in a totally different way. Like you say, he's sort of reveling in who he is, and that, you know, did you say it was sort of a glam, you know, finding the way he appears to people as something that he likes, you know, and there's this line when Tina first sees him, and again, this is my favourite scene in the film. Probably it's probably my favourite line in the film, where he sort of, you know, he grins at her. You see him and she says, "Please God," and he holds the glove up to his face and he says, "This is God," you know. And I just think, how awful and how cool is that all at once, you know? How do you get a character so well so quickly? And then he pursues her, and there's a chase ensues, and you know, that they sort of he appears from behind a tree that is far too thin to see. So it's all these moments of playing with space and, you know, time that you can do in a dream. I guess that's the exciting thing, I guess, about must have been writing it, was that you can do whatever you like. And
yeah,
then
I think like all the sequences that are set in the dreamscape, they do an incredible job of making them feel so like liminal, and it's like, oh, like anything could happen. Something could walk out from behind a space that isn't big enough for them. Literally, like one of my favorite like physical effects that they do, again, like the physical effects across the board are incredible, but like one of my favorites is when she's like she sinks into the stairs when she's climbing up the stairs. I'm like, that is so cool. And I'm watching this in 2025 going, that's super cool. I'm like, you know, we've got like CG shit that we see all the time, but that was just so remarkable, and just seeing her whole foot sink into the stair, I was like, that's cool. That would have blown my tiny mind back in '84 when I wasn't born.
And it's so true to what we've all had that dream, haven't we? Being pursued and not being able to move fast enough. And and I totally agree with you. It looks fantastic. And so this is the moment where, you know, Freddy gets Tina, that we go back into, you know, the non-dream world. Rod sort of wakes up and he's like, oh, what's going on? What's going on? He pulls the cover back. And then we have this extraordinary murder, you know, where Tina is killed in the real world by Freddy in the dream, you know. So we see that the blades come across, and she's, you know, almost handled into the air, isn't she, and is sort of pushed against the wall and rises up to the ceiling. I mean, it's an extraordinary effect, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's wild, and it sets the scene, and it sets the tone rather of Freddy as a killer, like just how violent he can be, and like it's messy, and it's like traumatizing for Rod, because he's basically witnessing it, not knowing what he can do. And she's being torn apart, like literally in front of him. Like, I can't imagine what that would be like to see, like in real life. And again, it's this kind of feeling of hopelessness, because this is all, in theory, happening in her mind, but the essence of Freddy is so, like, the strength of his, like, the evil, I guess, is so strong that it's able to manifest into something real, like actually killing somebody in real life, which is wild, and it's really scary. Like, I mean, even having nightmares alone is scary, but then them actually manifesting into literally killing someone that's next level. And that's when it sort of says, well, this is what you're in for. It's not just scary dreams, everybody. It could actually physically hurt you and kill you.
I completely agree. It's that moment where he goes, well, here is where here's where everything is pitched, is here, and this is where this is just the first, you know, and this is where we're going from. And then you know, the other two are woke up. They wake up. Sorry, I beg your pardon. They come in, and Rod has disappeared. He has run away, which, you know, looks really suspicious. But you get it, right? I've been maybe, you know, I'm quite judgmental of Rod, but I get why he does it. It doesn't look good, does it? So so this happens, and from then on, we sort of, you know, we go into the you know, the police, you know, investigating what's going on. Their assumption that, you know, Rod is the guy that we're looking for. We find out that when Nancy is taken to the station with her mum, who we've spoken very briefly about Nancy's mum, but her mum Marge, and as we said, you know, it's an unusual performance. It feels almost in and of itself very dreamlike. Whether this is intentional or not, we really don't know. And being in a cinema watching the film, the performance definitely gets a sort of quite amused response. It's certainly what our audience felt about it, wasn't it? You know, that it's kind of a funny performance.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I think some of that is I think when watching films that are non-contemporary, you know, I think there needs to be a sort of, in my mind anyway, when I watch films that are not contemporary or sort of made in the last 10 years, I sort of have a reach of, you know, allowance, I guess, of saying, actually, you know, sometimes, you know, people weren't able to achieve the same things that we could, be it from a sense of, like, literally in terms of special effects, but also in terms of performance and in terms of, like, cohesiveness across the board of all the performances. And I think I probably have more allowance than most people. I won't just laugh at something because it's a bit naff. I'm like, actually, you know, I want to kind of understand what they were trying to achieve first before I then actually go, oh, look at her fucking essentially sliding out with a little, like, cigarette, which happens later on. Like, where I'm like, that is just funny. I'm sorry, I can't. I can't not
definitely.
laugh at that.
But so I think we think there is almost something. It feels because it feels so dreamy. You think that maybe it was intentional, but her performance does feel quite other in the film. But nonetheless, an iconic performance, and I think definitely one that you come away from the film talking about. So So Nancy and Marge are in the police station now, and we find out that Nancy's dad is the sort of chief police officer here. His name's Don, and he's played by John Saxon, who many people, if you watch a lot of sort of 70s, 80s, and I think into the 90s as well movies, he had a really long, really great career performing, I think, alongside Bruce Lee and once or twice, and then being cast an awful lot as police officers. But I think it makes total sense why, because he just has this sort of, dignified, authoritarian sort of look. Authoritarian look, authoritarian, maybe something else. But he's great. He's really, really great here. And so, they have their interview. He asks, and Nancy's very defensive of Rod. She sort of doesn't feel that Rod's the guy that did this. And they go home, and we cut to the next day. And Nancy decides she's going to go to school. I think there's even a moment with her and her mum where her mum's having her early morning, swig from her bottle of vodka. And we may even now see Nancy sort of, starting to drink coffee more often, which becomes a big motif in the film. And Nancy decides she's going to school. And on the way, Rod does what every super innocent, non-suspect human being does. He ambushes her from behind and drags her into a sort of a clearing in between some bushes to explain his innocence to her.
Mm-hmm.
So, but little do they know that Nancy's dad has been waiting all along, and he takes this moment to arrest Rod, who tries to get away. And this whole moment is very it feels quite heightened as well, I think, when he's being chased away and the cars all drive in, it's pretty
yeah. I mean, I wonder if this is to be honest, I don't know if it's ever discussed, obviously, aside from the fact that Elm Street is in the title, but I'm presuming it's sort of middle America, like suburbia. It's probably maybe a relatively small town, so this is probably one of the biggest things that have happened since maybe the original, like Freddy Krueger moment that we find out about later from the mum. But maybe it feels like every single policeman in the area was there for that moment of his arrest. Literally both police cars corner him on the street. And I mean, it's good that they're taking it seriously, because, a woman's been, a young teen has been murdered. But I think it feels really over the top. And I think, I think it feels right, but it does feel like we're sort of getting an idea that there's a connection, more of a connection with Nancy to Freddy than we know at this point. But it feels like she has like an instinct of understanding why it's not Rod. And I think that's maybe sort of getting peppered in at this moment.
I think that's really interesting. Yeah. I think the idea that, and that's not something I've really thought about before, but you were saying about the way that people are reacting maybe is tied to what happened before. And I guess for the adults, the idea of a teenager being killed, even if at the moment it is one of them, unlike what happened, in the past, which was many more, but that they are high, obviously it's a terrible thing to happen anywhere, but maybe at this moment they are hypersensitive, that they whatever this is needs to be this young guy that did it, because if it's not, if it's not, is there another man who's doing this?
Yeah.
So Rod gets whisked away by the police. Nancy goes to school, and then in school, a nice little trivia bit here actually is when we now go into Nancy's school and we go into the lesson. The teacher in this scene is actress Lynn Shay. She's the wife of Robert Shay, who runs New Line Cinema, and had lots of sort of smaller roles in her career earlier on, and always gave, I think, really lovely performances, and then became a huge star in the Insidious films later on, and became sort of the main character in those films. But she's here, and they read. I can't remember what the poem is, but someone gets up in class and reads this poem, which has a lot of sort of premonition to it, similar to the scene in Halloween where Laurie is in class and someone is reading about fate. I think maybe even a little homage there, because they're so similar to each other in that moment. And then Nancy falls asleep and she dreams of Tina in a body bag. I mean, what an image, right?
Yeah, that's very creepy. And the whole kind of, again, sort of movement between spaces within the dream, and the body bag moving without anyone pulling it, like the legs going up and then her being sort of dragged by an invisible something, and the trail of blood all through the school. Like, it was very, very creepy, and I really like that. Then we ended up in the boiler room again, because this is his lair. He brings you back to the place where he's most powerful, I suppose, and to basically know that no matter what sort of potential door or portal you move through within the dreamscape, you could end up there. Like, I think that's great. I mean, it's creepy, but it's great.
Yeah, it is great, and it's such a good setting as well, isn't it? The boiler room, and you're right. Maybe that is where at this point where Freddy feels like he wants to. It's where he again, spoilers for later in the story, but it's where he took the children that he murdered earlier, and this is where he feels most comfortable doing these acts, even in a dream where you can be anywhere. He wants you to end up here.
Yeah.
I guess, like in it can take on, it can take on all these different forms, but for some reason it's just really comfortable with the clown, and to get away from Freddy in this moment, Nancy reaches out and she burns herself on one of the pipes in the room.
Yeah.
And it wakes up in class, and it's all very dramatic, and teacher tells her to go home, and when she heads outside she looks at her arm and realizes that the burn that happened in the dream has happened in reality.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the first moments where we realize that it is possible to kind of access that ability to manipulate your own dream and the outcome. So it's really cool that Nancy is suddenly now feeling a little bit of control, and that's when we go, okay, great, yes, we know this is going to be our hero. We're getting this moment of like, we can follow this character and know that despite like this kind of entity being massive and horrible and super powerful and really evil, that we still have someone who can escape from a dream now. And we know that, well, I think we look forward to a moment where she can do more than that. So this is kind of our first little moment of knowing that this is our final girl, our hero character, and she has that power, or she has a power over him, or at least over the dreams at this point.
And I think I do agree, and I think that also we get an idea at this moment. We'll talk a little bit about this maybe a little bit later on, because Nancy is a really interesting sort of final girl character. But also this is her moment where she starts to take, as you say, agency over what's going on, and also, Freddy being an adult is her starting to take control of, her situation, which we'll see in a much, much bigger way later on. So after Nancy has burnt her arm, she goes to visit Rod in prison and ask him, did you do it? Because I think at this point, I think we know that, Nancy doesn't think he did, particularly with what's going on, but she asks him and he says he didn't. And he says he's been, quite tellingly now, he says that he's been dreaming about Freddy too, that he's been having these dreams, or at the moment about this man with, knives for fingers. And so, quite shaken by this, she goes home and she has a bath. And before this, we have another sort of interaction where her mum seems like extremely concerned about her falling asleep in the bath and drowning, and almost becomes a sort of a statistic for, well, do you know how many people drown in baths every year? Which is another sort of odd moment. And while she's asleep, we get probably one of the most iconic images from A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is Nancy in the bath, and from between her legs, Freddy's hand, his knife, his knife glove, finger knives come up through, and then they're interrupted, and then when it goes back, she's dragged down under the water. And another one of these really awesome dream moments of, you being underwater and seeing where you can escape to, but something almost unseen is keeping you under.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like, I'm glad that particular image, because it is so iconic, that I'd not seen it before, so I did not see that coming. And also, like, it's so, like, unsettling to have, it's quite an intimate thing to be having a bath, because you're super vulnerable because you're completely naked, and the sort of taking advantage of that vulnerability, and it's kind of got this like awful sexual connotation as well of it being between her legs, and it's just it's really quite disconcerting, that whole section, and then she gets out of bed and she seemed very remarkably the bath rather, gets out of the bath, and her mum's in there sort of frantically kind of trying to look after her, and she seems relatively chill considering what's just happened to her. And I wonder if this is like, she's almost like jaded isn't the right word because she's not that far in yet, but I think she's almost getting used to how much Freddie is fucking with her, and so she's like it's obviously really traumatic in the moment, but she bounces back so quickly. And I think that's, again, like, we're just seeing that Nancy is really like a really strong female character, which is very cool.
Absolutely. And it's that thing about parents again, isn't it? That she almost is dismissive of her mum caring about it. It's just like, look, I need to take care of me at the moment. I'm fine. Almost going, you've got your own, because obviously, in the film, Marge is battling her demons as well. And almost that Nancy doesn't want to put more stress on her than she does. So I think then she then from that moment on starts taking, is it Stay Awake that she finds in the cupboard, the Stay Awake tablets. I wonder what they do is the question.
Well,
I guess we'll never find out.
Hopefully what it says on the tin. I don't know. Maybe.
Me too. And we then further on, Nancy goes to her bedroom and Glenn is outside. He is doing that super, I think it's a really American, sort of idea, isn't it? Of climbing up the, what do you call those at the side of a house?
Is the trellis.
Trellis. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Up the trellis. So, don't get that here so much, but really sort of iconic. Is it? You'd see that in sort of like Clarissa Explains It All or something like that, would you? Where like the boyfriend would always climb through the window or something, and
I mean, it feels like it's like such a quintessential teenage like. My boyfriend is coming over. He's sneaking in the window. My parents better not hear. Like they think I'm studying. All this sort of like classic espionage of the adolescence of an American teen. Like I think we see it a lot, and I think because this is probably we haven't seen it a lot in media at this point, it still feels quite like a normal thing to do, and I it's quite sweet though. Like I think it's really lovely, this sort of like a gallant knight climbing up to the tower where the princess is, just to I just think it's really, it's very cute. It's very, very wholesome, and there's probably an undertone of him wanting something. And at one point, I think he's like laid on her bed, and she's like, "Excuse me," and then she dumps him onto the chair next to the bed because he's not. That's a no-go zone, Mister. Like,
as you say, you're right. It definitely. I love that reference you made to like sort of the fairy tale element of it. I think that's really. And if we're dealing in the realm of dreams and fantasy and stuff as well, that's really, really true. It does feel really innocent here, though. Any sort of suggestion of any hanky panky is immediately dismissed, and obviously Wes Craven will have moments like this later on, in particularly in like the Scream franchise with Sydney and her boyfriend, where there is it's much more overt, the connotation of what he wants, and her want to wait for the right moment and whatnot. And it's I believe it's at this moment where we start to learn about Glenn's complete inability to stay awake unprompted for more than 5 minutes. He's a remarkably what's a kind of sort of ineffectual help in this film, isn't he? Just he every opportunity he has to really rise to be that knight in shining armor is just never happens, and I guess does make way for Nancy to be a hero in this film in the real sense of it. She is not in the end someone that has to rely on anyone but herself to save herself. So Nancy tells Glenn, I'm gonna fall asleep for a bit. Please don't, nod off the moment I fall asleep. You're not going to do that, are you? No, don't worry. It's all going to be okay. And she says that she wants to fall asleep and he's to wake her when, to make sure that she's okay. And in her dream, she goes to the police station and she sees Freddie menacing Rod in his cell. And then there's a chase scene between her and Freddie. Where are you? She says, and he says, I'm right here, and jumps out of the bushes and chases her. And we then get that amazing image you brought up earlier of her, running away, getting into the house, but even then not being safe, having to wade through this almost tarry liquid staircase.
Oh, yeah. I think that's probably my favorite moment. I think it's because I think I audibly gasped because I was so taken aback by how cool that looked. The sort of first moments of special effect that you see in the film from the earlier dreamscape sequences, Freddy pushing through the wall and the killing of Tina, those are all very, very cool to watch. But I think this was the first moment where I was like, oh, I was like, how did they? Oh, I see. You can sort of see in frame if if you're really looking for it, you can see the next step has a hole in it where a foot's going to go through. But it didn't matter. In that moment, I saw it and just went, that I've never seen that. I've never seen it in anything else. And even if it has been used in something else, it's just a film that I've clearly not come across in the time that I've watched movies. But I just thought it was so cool, so remarkable, and so exactly like what I could imagine happening in a dream or a nightmare when you're trying to get away from something. I thought that just encapsulated that so well for me.
Absolutely. I think it is for sure the most... I can't think of any off the top of my head that I've seen that remotely encapsulate that feeling of, being trapped and not getting away. And I think it does sort of get you because it's one of those ones you can really relate to. If there were a scene in this film where someone's teeth start falling out, that would be the other one where you go, oh, it's that,
Yeah.
So Nancy is attacked by Freddy then in a bedroom. They end up falling outside, and Nancy is saved by her alarm clock. Because Glenn, bless him, didn't take his stay awake and has fallen almost immediately asleep. And we kind of know this already because you see at the beginning of her dream, Glenn sort of appear and she says, oh, you're watching over me, right? Is it? Yeah, so it's all good. Don't worry. This is definitely not me asleep either. So they race, Nancy is aware that something terrible is going to happen to Rod. They run to the police station. They have a conversation with her dad and with the police officer on duty. We must him. But by the time they get there, Rod, we see, is hung by Freddy but with his bed sheets, sort of mirroring that image. You guess I guess you do get of when suicides happen in prisons. That's often one that you are confronted with, and so it feels like quite a pointed sort of vicious murder in that way, that Freddy's almost trying to make it look like Rod did this to him. Almost certainly is making it look like Rod did this to himself. Yeah,
definitely. We see a really dark and sinister side, really manipulative of a knowingness of the perspective of what he's doing from an external source. So especially knowing that he's in a prison cell, knowing that Rod is already essentially on trial, for want of a better phrase, for what Freddy himself is doing. So we get tactical, I guess, a tactical choice of kill, because we know that he can just slash somebody up, but he's opted not to do that and opted for something far more far more incriminating of Rod in order to sort of hammer home that it's the idea that it could have been Rod in the first place to anybody who doesn't know otherwise.
Yeah, and I guess it's something he really does do in this film, actually, where is that he is trying to make it look like someone else did it. With Tina's murder, it's the perfect situation for Rod to be blamed. In this situation, well, of course, Rod, might do this to himself, confronted with such a terrible situation that's occurred. And it's toying with people on another level. It's killing them isn't enough. It's playing with your food, isn't it? And so after this, Nancy's taken to a sleep disorder clinic. Her mum and the doctor watch her sleep. She is, obviously taken by an extremely, they say, oh, we need the numbers to go up to a certain number, and it's in like the single digits, and they go up to like 30 or something. So it's really, really bad. And when they wake her up, she has brought Freddie's hat back into reality with her. And this must, this then leads to her coming home a little bit later and finding all of the windows barred up. Her mum has, gone, some may say, slightly over the top in the home, security protection in the house. And Nancy comes home, and the image you said earlier of her mum sort of dreamily, I've used the word dreamy a lot about her, but it does, doesn't it? It feels so sort of flowy. It sort of comes, it's a very sort of almost like dynasty-like, she sort of comes and she lights this cigarette, and Nancy says, "What's all this for?" And she says, "For protection." And she says, "From what?" And not from what, from who? Come with me into the cellar. All right, okay, cool. This should be interesting. And they go down there, and this is where we get our reveal as to who Freddie is, or should I say? We should say, really, I guess, in the opening credits of this film, Fred Krueger. He's referred to as Fred Krueger.
Yes, Fred.
But Nancy does call. She almost christens him as. I think she's the only one to refer to him as Freddie in this film, and maybe there's something about that. She's. But her mother reveals to her that Freddie is, as she calls him, a child murderer who killed around 20 kids locally. He was captured, arrested and let out on a technicality. And the parents form a vigilante group, and they go and find him in his boiler room, and they burn him. They burn him to death. They throw petrol or lighter fluid around, and they kill him. And she then says, I've even got his glove, and shows that she has Freddie's glove there. And what's the line she has? It's something like, he can't get you now because Mummy killed him, or something like that, which is quite the statement.
Yeah. I think, but it doesn't feel like, and I'm trying to figure out whether it's that the mum doesn't truly believe it herself, because otherwise why did she put the bars on the house? Or she's saying, oh no, it's something else, but it couldn't be Freddie because we killed him. So, and my other thought, it just occurred to me, is there any mention of the family having another child, and Freddie killed that child, and that's why the mum is so involved? Because I don't think anything gets mentioned in this film, but if that's something that comes up later, I don't know.
It's really interesting you say that. So I've never read that under the surface of it but it is something that I did see mentioned online, that people think that maybe this hits so close for them because maybe they had a child that was. I'm trying to think if there's anything like that in the sequels. I cannot remember. Okay. But we'll find out maybe.
Because in my mind, I was thinking it would kind of justify the intensity of the mum, the fact that she has a drinking problem, like all of these things kind of work, and also the fact that she's the one who has the glove. Like, it feels like maybe even she was like the leader of the team that went out to take the vigilante justice on Freddie. But also, like, when you see the fact that she's got the glove, I'm like, no. We all know that that's basically a totem. That's why his spirit is focused on Nancy. It's because that is in here, and it's even in a like an old like wood burner, like a little stove thing. I'm like, that's also, you're just asking for trouble, because you're basically putting it in the thing that he was, or something similar to what he was forged in. You know what I mean?
That's one of those. That's the last thing we should be doing. A glove in a boiler. What's going on there?
Yeah.
I love that idea that and it definitely is a totem. It's an iconic image. It's it's synonymous with Freddy. Freddy doesn't come without the glove, but the idea of it being a totem in that way, that it's almost like a sort of summoning symbol, I love that. That's great. That's really, really cool. But yeah, if I had the glove of a child murderer who killed children in a boiler room, who was killed in a boiler room, I maybe wouldn't store the glove in a boiler. But I might be, maybe I'm the odd. I'm odd in that way. So this revelation, I think, is meant to almost cure Nancy, isn't it? This is her mum saying, look, I did this extreme act so you can be free. You know about it now. You need to be free of the pain you're getting. In a way, it's a really even though it's an incredibly violent act, it's an act of love, isn't it? For I think the way that she sees it is that I did this, the worst thing you can do, I did it for you so you can be safe. And so now you almost, it's like a pleading as well. Please get better. You have to get better because I sacrificed. I did this for you and I want you to be better now. Yeah. And so we find out who Freddy is. And then that night, I believe we go to Nancy saying to Glenn on the phone, look, I need you to, you can't let me down this time. You need to come and wake me up at this time. And she hints that she's going to go into her dream now and she's going to get him. She's going to get him. And she has the line, whatever you do, don't fall asleep, which is so iconic, so brilliant. And so she stays awake and she's going to go asleep later on. But Glenn, bless him, even Miss Nude America couldn't keep the poor fella awake, And we see this interaction, I think, actually this really, the only sort of really sweet interaction between sort of parents and their kids in the film, when his mum comes in, and even though it's a conversation about, what are you going to watch later on, Miss Nude America? How will you hear what she's saying? You're listening to music. Who cares what she says, Mum? This is, it's Miss Nude America. It's just, you get a sense they've got quite a loving relationship, the two of them, I think, at that moment.
Yeah, but there's less judgment from her and her just kind of embracing her son, and his lifestyle choices, I suppose. And his room is quite an expression of him. There's loads of posters and things like that all over the wall, and it's got a nice. I think he's quite a it just seems like a nice kid, and they do a really good job of just making him. I guess that's part of the reason why he's a bit inconsequential in terms of ineffectual is probably what I actually mean in terms of helping Nancy against Freddy, because he maybe doesn't have the same issues that she has with her parents being a little bit disconnected with her, because he has a connection and he has a good relationship. He doesn't have any issues falling asleep. He doesn't have any issues just having a nice girlfriend and being a nice person. I think it's quite a telling kind of juxtaposition to someone like Rod, for example. Absolutely. And poor Glenn, he does fall asleep, and then we are treated to probably one of the most extraordinarily gory deaths. And it was nice actually in the cinema the other night they played the unrated version of the film, which I haven't seen in ages. It's long been the R-rated cut on home releases, except for now it's just come out uncut. But it's so much blood, so much blood. It just keeps on going, really. It's wonderful. It was so good.
It's a great effect. And so the police arrive. Nancy can see. She knows what's happened. And she speaks to her dad on the phone, who is now in Glenn's home, to deal with what's happened. And she says, I'm going to go and get someone, and I need you to be here when I get him. And he's quite just, of course, yeah, Dad, of course I will, baby. Daddy will come. Daddy will get the guy. You're okay. And at this point, Nancy has been reading up on booby traps and self-defense, and ways to make your home safe from intruders. Quite extreme ways to make your home safe from intruders. And we see her. We've seen her set up. Via montage, the way that we see how she's going to take Freddy down, that her plan is to bring him into the real world and, get him for herself, take it upon herself to get him. She goes into her dream, she manages to pull Freddy out, and then we have this sequence where he pursues her through her home, and all of these traps really are they're quite effective, and it's an odd moment.
Yeah.
It's not really like anything else, really.
I think that's something that makes Nancy stand out as a final girl, or as a sort of like lead character type in a horror film, is that she is like really practical, and seems there's like several moments where she is not in control and then regains it, and then as the film goes on she just gets stronger and stronger, and almost to the point where she has a strategy to go against Freddy, whatever his strategy is or whatever he's planning on doing. And the whole like what an amazing idea to go and research survival methods and ways to trap like people and ways to protect your home. Like, it's so smart and such a normal and sensible thing to do. If something was trying to get you, of course you'd want to do something to like fight against it. But yeah, it just like, it smacks of her being like just a really intelligent person and actually using her brain to fight against this entity.
Absolutely, and such a a young person as well. I guess you could have a sense that, like, I don't know, another really iconic, powerful character in genre cinema, but Ripley in Alien, who really becomes such a hero, such a strong person, such a a fighter, someone who survives against all odds, but. At that point, Ripley is a professional who has been traveling and has some sort of experience and stuff. Whereas she's just a kid. She's just a kid. Yet she finds this power in herself to confront, what is, in just the worst of people, who has become a supernatural entity. And she, for the most part, completely, for the most part succeeds in, taking power upon herself. Eventually the police come and break in after she alerts them, but they find that they're actually too late to save Nancy's mum, who is taken by Freddy into what we assume is some sort of dream, into the dream world. He escapes her, and her skeletal sort of body reaches out to Nancy as she's taken away, and she tells her dad that she wants a moment to be left alone in the room. He goes away, and she turns her back. Earlier in the film, Glenn talks about a way that you can gain power over your dreams is to turn your back on the thing that's frightening you. And so Nancy turns her back. Freddy comes up through the awesome effect of him sort of coming up through the bed again. Says he's going to get her, but she completely diminishes him. She says, you're nothing, you're shit. He tries to attack her and almost destroys himself in the process, because Nancy is now too powerful for him to be able to kill her. I mean, it's a great idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I was just thinking about the fact that, with the exception of the sleeping, the dream, that Nancy has at the school, all of the sequences are like around a bed, like all the sort of deaths are around the bed, which makes sense because that's where we go to bed, that's where we go to sleep. But like, I just like the fact that could have been like, it could have been quite samey, but every single version of a death or something that happens to a character who's been asleep and like in their bed is all quite unique and quite different. And yeah, I just really like that even in that moment where we've sort of had this like skeletal reveal, and then we go into her turning away, from memory, and comment section, correct me if I'm wrong, there was almost like a blue kind of hue to it. So it was almost as if where it's a continuation of that same moment, and then he dissipates into that blue when she turns away, and he sort of like spectrally like fades away. I just think it's, I mean, I don't know what the connection is there, but I guess because we're still in the dreamscape, it's still part of that same moment. This kind of like almost like magical nature to it that we haven't really necessarily discussed, like his kind of magical abilities. That's what I think about when I think about like the color blue and sort of like the sparkle that it had in it as well, which it wouldn't have been something I would think would happen with Freddy, but also like blue sparkly magic of him disappearing. Maybe that's part of Nancy's magic. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a point that trying to be as spoiler free as possible for later films in the series that we can definitely discuss later on, because you've definitely hit on something there, and I think definitely one to come back to in that respect.
That makes me really excited to see the other films that I've somehow kind of, well, you know, because I was like paying so much attention during it, going, this is really cool, and I know there are more of them. So what kind of like little Easter eggs are there here already that will reveal, or like the rest of the story will come out later?
Absolutely, all these things in time, right? We will get there, but I think that's a cool thing to have mentioned. The final scene of the film is Nancy steps out from the bedroom and is suddenly cast into the bright light of day, you know, what feels like a respite from the horrors that she's been through. And her mum is there at the door with her, who says that she doesn't want to drink anymore. Which is obviously an excellent, thing to hear at that moment. Her friends all arrive now, no longer dead, in a convertible car, and everything looks perfect. And of course, as we know, if something appears that perfect, that idyllic, it can't possibly be. The car, once they're all in it, takes control. It locks, the windows come up, Nancy in terror bangs on the windows to try and get out. The hood of the car comes up, and it's got the red and green sweater crosses across it. They are driven away by the car as Nancy's mum idyllically waves goodbye to them before she is very abruptly and very strangely pulled through the window, the window in the door behind her by Freddy's glove. And then we cut to something we just haven't had time to talk about, and we're coming to the end of the episode now. Is the rhyme, the skipping rhyme that you see children do, the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. We cut to that as the film ends. Again, to talk about that very briefly, because it would be wrong not to quickly talk about it. Really cementing Freddy as almost like an urban legend, as a mythological, a modern day mythological character. There's something odd about the fact that there's that rhyme exists, but yet the teenagers of Elm Street don't seem to know anything about Freddy. But we are dealing in dreams, aren't we? I guess so that can be explained away.
Yeah, I also think there's a really interesting moment where Nancy kind of sings it a little bit in the bath before the encounter happens with Freddy. And I think because it feels to me like there are several moments throughout the film where Nancy has this really, like, a seemingly very intense connection to Freddy versus what the other adolescents that we meet have. And I know that maybe some of that is because the sort of, maybe the mother was the driving force behind things, maybe because the totem is literally in her house, maybe because she has this potential within her to have this like power over him. Maybe she's like, I'm not saying like it's a full on like 1v1 match and like they're the perfect matchup, but like it does feel like she is like it's a really quite obvious setup that she is the one that can defeat him or will be able to find the power over him. But yeah, I really like how it ends very much with it. Oh no, sorry, he's not actually gone.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. It's cruel as well, because you think Nancy really deserves to have had the triumph there, and it's sort of taken away right at the last moment. But hey, we know they may not have known it then, but we know for sure that Freddy's coming back, and he is he's not just coming back once or twice either. From here on in, we see many sequels to A Nightmare on Elm Street into the 80s and into the 90s and beyond, although we're certainly overdue a Nightmare on Elm Street film nowadays. A Nightmare on Elm Street is a big success when it comes out, a huge success, not just as a film, but also in creating an iconic horror character who stands among, the true greats of the genre. And Nancy, along with as a true icon of horror, a true, one of the great final girls in cinema. After A Nightmare on Elm Street, a short while later, we have A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 arrives, which is a very different film and is certainly something we're going to go into at some point. But Freddy is becomes this huge cultural icon. He appears later on lunchboxes, he gets his own TV series, and it seems so strange for someone with that background. And who is that cruel and mean to become such a, for kids to have him on their lunchboxes, but that is what happens. We are coming very much to the end of our time today, and I feel like there's still so much to talk about, but we
totally.
are here.
Imagine if we dedicated the entire podcast to it's just Elm Street. That's all we're going to talk about forever. Yeah, I feel like actually that would be very possible. But yeah, it's been awesome talking about it. It's been so much fun. Yeah, really cool. Should I take us home?
I think it is time. Thank you all. On my behalf, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so lovely to talk about this film, and over to you, Sarah, to close the show.
Thank you. And just to reiterate what Steve was saying, thank you so much for tuning in, and we really hope that you like the inaugural episode of Into the Darkness. We are delighted to be back on behalf of all of Uncanny. Keep an eye out for our other upcoming projects, including the return of our podcast, The Darkness Between Us, starting with our Christmas special, 3 chilling ghost stories that we will be giving you as a present this December, and then the podcast itself will return in 2026. Now, for those of you looking for a horror fix in the meantime, there are 18 episodes of The Darkness Between Us available anywhere that you get your podcasts. And follow us on social media to keep up to date with everything that we're doing. So search Uncanny Collective on Facebook and at Uncanny_Collective on Instagram. Thank you again to my wonderful podcasting pal today, Steve Fitzgerald. And thank you again, Sarah, everyone, for listening.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween, everyone.